Alexander the Great, one of the greatest conquerors in history, left an indelible mark with his resounding victories. He ascended to the throne of Macedonia at the age of just 20, and in less than a decade, Alexander built an empire stretching from Greece to Egypt and as far as India. His military genius was demonstrated in monumental battles like the Battle of Granicus, where he first defeated the Persians, and the Battle of Issus, where his army faced the massive forces of King Darius III and emerged with a glorious victory. One of his most impressive triumphs was the Battle of Gaugamela, where Alexander turned the tide of battle, completely defeating the Persian army and bringing an end to the Achaemenid Empire. More than just a brilliant military strategist, Alexander was also a leader who knew how to unite the lands he conquered. He founded many cities bearing his name, such as Alexandria in Egypt, which became a center of culture and knowledge in the ancient world. Alexander's achievements have elevated him to legendary status, becoming a symbol of power, talent, and an unrelenting spirit of conquest. The sudden death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC was not just a personal tragedy. It was an event that sent shockwaves through the ancient world. At the height of his power, Alexander was just 32 years old when he died unexpectedly after experiencing a series of strange symptoms. His passing came at a critical moment. He had been preparing for a new campaign in Arabia, one that could have extended his empire even further. But instead of continuing his conquests, Alexander was struck down, and his death has since become one of history's greatest mysteries. Was it a natural illness, or was there something more sinister at play? Even more unsettling is the fact that his son, Alexander IV, also died under suspicious circumstances years later. Together, their deaths have fueled theories of a dark conspiracy, possibly orchestrated by those closest to Alexander, who stood to gain the most from his demise. The mysterious illness of Alexander the Great. Historical records tell us that Alexander's illness began shortly after attending a grand banquet. He consumed wine, and not long after, he started to feel unwell. What followed was a slow and agonizing decline. Over the course of 12 days, Alexander experienced intense fever, severe abdominal pain, and eventually, full paralysis. He was unable to speak or move as his condition worsened, leaving those around him helpless. Several historians have proposed that Alexander may have succumbed to diseases such as malaria or typhoid, which were common in that era. However, the symptoms don't fully match these diseases. Malaria tends to cause cyclical fevers, and while typhoid can lead to abdominal pain and fever, the paralysis Alexander experienced was unusual. This has led many to speculate that he may have been poisoned, a theory that has persisted for centuries. But if this was the case, who could have orchestrated such a plot, and what were their motives? One of the main suspects in this theory is Antipater, the father of Cassander and a key figure in Alexander's administration. While Alexander was away on his campaigns, conquering lands from Greece to India, Antipater had been left in charge of Macedonia. Initially, their relationship was strong, but as Alexander's empire expanded, cracks began to form. Antipater was reportedly growing uneasy with Alexander's increasing power and influence. According to some theories, Alexander began to suspect Antipater of treachery. Relations between the two grew increasingly strained, and it's believed that Antipater feared for his position. In a bold move, Antipater allegedly sent his son Cassander to Babylon, where Alexander was residing, with a secret mission to assassinate the king. Some historical sources even suggest that Cassander may have used poison to carry out the deed, delivered during the banquet where Alexander fell ill. The exact nature of the poison remains a matter of speculation, with some researchers suggesting that a slow-acting toxin, such as hellebore, might have been used. What's even more intriguing is that Cassander, after his father's death, would later become one of the most powerful men in the empire. But his ambitions didn't stop there. He would go on to orchestrate the death of Alexander Thor, the son of Alexander the Great, to secure his hold on Macedonia. After Alexander the Great's death, the vast empire he had built quickly began to unravel. Alexander the Mshfor, though recognized as the legitimate heir, was just a child at the time of his father's death. In the chaotic aftermath, the Diadochi, the generals who had served under Alexander, fought amongst themselves for control of the empire. Alexander Firth became nothing more than a pawn in their political games, used as leverage by those vying for power. Among these generals, Cassander proved to be the most ambitious. As the son of Antipater, Cassander was deeply entrenched in Macedonian politics, and he feared that if Alexander Firth lived to adulthood, the young prince would seek to reclaim his father's empire. This was a threat Cassander could not afford, and so, in 310 BC, he made a ruthless decision. Cassander ordered the poisoning of Alexander Thort and his mother Roxana, effectively wiping out the last legitimate claim to Alexander the Great's throne. Cassander's actions were cold and calculated, but they solidified his control over Macedonia. By eliminating the royal bloodline, he ensured that no one could challenge his authority. Cassander became one of the most powerful leaders in the wars of the Diadochi, the successors of Alexander, and his rule marked the final end of the great conquerors' dynasty. The deaths of Alexander the Great and Alexander the Fourth were not mere accidents of fate. When we look at the events surrounding their passing, it becomes clear that their deaths were part of a much larger, more sinister plot. A conspiracy driven by greed, ambition, and power. The signs of poisoning, coupled with the rapid rise of those who benefited from these deaths, point to a carefully orchestrated plan to seize control of the empire. Cassander's involvement is especially telling. Not only did he allegedly carry out the poisoning of Alexander the Great, but he also made sure to eliminate the last living link to the royal family by murdering Alexander Thor. This wasn't just about gaining power, it was about ensuring that his rule would remain unchallenged. The deaths of Alexander the Great and Alexander the Fourth mark the end of an era. The empire that Alexander built, stretching from Greece to India, was fractured and torn apart by his former generals, each vying for their piece of the once great kingdom. While some of them would carve out lasting dynasties of their own, none would ever achieve the same level of glory as Alexander. Yet the question remains, did Alexander die of natural causes, or was he the victim of an elaborate plot by those closest to him? Was the murder of his son, Alexander Thor, simply the final step in this conspiracy to erase the royal bloodline once and for all? While we may never have definitive answers, the mystery of Alexander the Great's death continues to captivate historians and storytellers alike. In the end, the real truth might forever remain hidden in the shadows of history, but the intrigue surrounding his death ensures that his legacy will never be forgotten. What do you think? Was Alexander's death the result of a political conspiracy, or was it simply a tragic twist of fate? As always, the secrets of history often remain in the shadows, waiting for us to uncover them.